So, good morning, everyone. I'm Marquise Jackson, the Regional Director for the San Diego and Imperial Small Business Development Center, and welcome to our presentation.
And I'm Danny Fitzgerald, so our name's a little reversed, but that's okay. Sometimes we're interchangeable anyway. So we appreciate you all coming on. We're the San Diego and Imperial Small Business Development Center. Our program is hosted by Southwestern College. So if we could go ahead and kind of roll into the presentation, we'll be able to talk about who we are and components of everything that we do. So we really appreciate you all. We appreciate the invitation from the University of San Diego, the Nonprofit Institute, as well as the support we get from the City of San Diego. And to tell you a little bit about who we are as the Small Business Development Center, if we could go to the next slide there. We'll get going. But anyway, I'll start telling a little bit about who we are. You can see a couple of the logos on there. That we're chartered really by the U.S. Small Business Administration. And we are also equally funded by the California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. At Southwestern College, myself and Marquise, we oversee what we call the lead center or the network. We hold the master grant agreements with both the Small Business Administration as well as the California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. And our charter really is to be able to assist small businesses from idea phase, where they're just literally an idea, to being able to start their business, all the way through all the growth phases of their business, from their first year to their 40th year, all the way even to exit. And so we assist them in a lot of different ways. The primary ways in which we do this is, of course, number one is with one-on-one business advising. What we do is we have a staff of over 100 different business advisors throughout the San Diego and Imperial region to be able to work with business owners one-on-one. We have folks that are experts in a wide array. We also have folks that speak a number of different languages. We have well over a dozen languages that we speak, of course, being Spanish, Arabic, Swahili, Vietnamese, Cantonese, Mandarin, Korean, as well as many other languages that we also are able to provide service in. So a couple of ways in which to understand how we're structured is, of course, we hold the master grant here at Southwestern College and be able to provide that types of service. But to do that, we really rely on our partner organizations. And so we have 8 different sub-award partners in addition to the service we provide at Southwestern College. And those partners include everything from the University of San Diego, where we have the BRINC, which is our technology and innovation program, as well as supporting the Nonprofit Institute to assist nonprofit businesses, in particular as they access capital during these disaster times. In addition, of course, we have Mira Costa College for our North San Diego, East County Economic Development Council for our East County operations. We have Imperial Valley EDC for our Imperial Valley operations. In addition, we have the Asian Business Association in Kearny Mesa, the International Rescue Committee, which focuses on recently migrated folks, and they're in City Heights and in El Cajon. We also have, for our technology programs, like I said, the BRINC at the University of San Diego, as well as Connect Foundation. And then we do have our export SBDC as part of San Diego Regional EDC through their World Trade Center program. And so we really are one large program where from Southwestern College, we provide these different awards. But then in addition, each of our locations, as well as us at the Lead Center, we partner with a ton of different nonprofits. We work with business improvement districts. We work with other organizations that focus on particular communities. And we work with you to be able to assist the businesses in your community, or the people in your community that are looking to start businesses, to provide entrepreneurship training, to provide everything from bookkeeping training, and so forth. Of course, during this crisis, during the last 3 months, our efforts have been enormous. Right off, when the disaster was declared, we had a massive spike in service. And since then, we've served well over 8,000 businesses throughout the region, and we've also assisted them to access over $80 million in capital. A key component of that is also we didn't want the nonprofit community to be left behind. And so right away, we partnered with the Nonprofit Institute at the University of San Diego to provide the same level of service that we provide to small businesses, but also to nonprofits, to be able to walk you through your EIDL applications, your PPP applications, and really understand all the different types of disaster capital that are available, not just to the small businesses, but also to you, because nonprofits, as a 501c3, you also are a business and are eligible for these programs. And so probably the bulk of the rest of our presentation, a lot of the PowerPoints are going to be about the Paycheck Protection Program. We know many of you took advantage of that. But if you have not, and if you are a 501c3 and you've had operations, we'll kind of get into that and explain what that is, because you still can apply.
Absolutely. And so I want to reiterate one thing before I dive into some of the information on the next slide. Danny eloquently laid out the Small Business Development Center and the services that we offer. I want to encourage you all to go ahead and please take advantage of the SBDC services through our partnership with the Nonprofit Institute at USD. We tailor all of our services to needs that you all have. So if there is something you're struggling with, as far as getting your nonprofit through this COVID situation, please lean on us. We're a resource that's here for you to do that. So diving more into the PPP, one thing we want to reiterate about the Paycheck Protection Program is although it's an SBA product, it goes, through banks and other lenders. So it's a, government product, but the banks are the ones getting it out there on the street. So if you haven't already accessed the PPP, you definitely want to go to the bank and not to the SBA. And we have information where you can find banks that are participating. If you get in contact with the Nonprofit Institute people, the folks over there could definitely point you in the right direction of getting some of that help. So if you already have the PPP, one of the things that's really hot right now is getting forgiven. So how can you be forgiven? The first thing you have to do in order to be forgiven is submit a forgiveness request. So if you already haven't seen what that request looks like, it's a multi-page document written by government accountants and lawyers, which is very, very complicated, and even for us who do this type of work every day, and not easy to step through. So I encourage you to get some assistance with the PPP program application. One of the things, and we'll talk about this all throughout our presentation, is there's no rush. You're going to be forgiven. The dollars are already out there. So just make sure you use the loan effectively and you use it in accordance with all the rules and regulations, so that when it comes time for forgiveness, you're able to take advantage of it and submit your application to be forgiven that is accurate and easy to process by the bank, because trust me, they're going to get tons and tons of these requests out there. So a little bit about eligibility of the PPP program. So as a small business or a nonprofit, like a 501c3, you are eligible for the PPP if you were in operation prior to February 15th of this year, and you either you paid your employees. So you have to be a nonprofit in operation and have paid employees in order to qualify for the PPP loan. Or if you're a business and you're taking advantage of the Nonprofit Institute conference right now, you can be a small business as well, either organized as a sole proprietor or other types of businesses. The only thing is you have to pay wages, right? You can't pay independent contractors and use those independent contractors for the PPP loan calculation. And we'll get into a little bit more of that information in the coming slides. Next slide.
So we've talked a bit about the eligibility, and Marquise explained that the forgiveness process is somewhat lengthy. But I think one of the main things to do is, we're going to talk about this, is more so is the strategies that you can do as you have your PPP loan, and understand not just what the forgiveness process is, but also some of the updates. So last week the Senate passed and was signed into law the PPP Flexibility Act. And so this presentation is going to actually take into account those types of things. And number one, along with that, is the forgiveness of the loan, and understanding on how that particularly works is because it's based on demonstrated payroll costs mortgage interest, utility costs, et cetera, all during a 24-week period. If you'd asked us this question last week, that would have been an 8-week period. So this is a huge flexibility for you in your ability to be able to spend down those particular funds. And so if you're a nonprofit or a business that is not taking advantage of the PPP, you still have until June 30th to take advantage. The flexibility that was implemented with the new PPP-FA are very, very important. So also what you saw on there were a couple of the websites that are there. You could go to the Treasury website, the SBA's website, and understand that. But also to understand what happens with the PPP is if you're not forgiven from the loan, if you don't take advantage of that, and there are some businesses that are out there that are just using it for operating costs. This is initially structured as a 2-year loan. However, with the PPP Flexibility Act, those loans can be now up to 5 years. If you have an existing PPP loan and you want it to be a 5-year loan, you do need to request that for 5 years to your lender because your contract right now says 2 years. If you were to get a new loan now going forward, basically between now and the end of the month, that would be a 5-year loan. And so those are a couple of the basics. So the key things is the forgiveness is based on what you're doing over a 24-week period with the eligible costs focused on payroll and then some other operating costs, which we'll get into, both understanding what payroll counts as well as what else counts. So if we go to the next slide.
So looking at the PPP program and what counts, right? So what expenditures can you use to draw down the loan and be forgiven for it? So, you know, like Danny was saying before, the primary purpose of the PPP is to keep our employees off of unemployment and to keep them employed. So if you're looking at what expenditures you can use the PPP on is, you know, wages paid. So anything that you're paying to your employees. It could also include commissions and cash tips. One of the important things to know about, you know, what's counting for payroll in the 24 weeks is, you know, the payroll taxes. So you unfortunately won't be able to use the federal payroll portion because they're excluded because this is a federal program, but you'll be able to use the state payroll taxes, including workers' comp, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. So any expenditures or payments you've made for vacation, sick, medical, or family leave also count under the PPP program. And so any expenses you've paid for your employees for their your group health, any retirement plan, and like I said, workers' compensation. Earlier on in the PPP program, that was a little bit of gray area, but we've studied up and read the interim final rule on the Treasury site, and workers' compensation is definitely included in there. And so if you're a small business that's organized as a sole proprietor and not a LLC or a C Corp, the compensation that you pay to yourself via a draw can also be included in that calculation, and we'll touch on that in a deeper level on the next side. And so some of the exclusions, it's a government program, there always has to be exclusions. So here in San Diego, we're truly a binational region in that we, our proximity to Mexico allows us to have employees that are able, to maybe live across the border but work in the U.S. So an exclusion that impacts probably us more than other places and regions across the nation is you won't be able to include any payroll costs for employees whose primary residence is outside of the U.S. So, unfortunately for those of you who have employees who their primary residence is just across the border, those employees won't be able to be included in the PPP calculation. And another important one that you have to account for an exclusion is for any compensation over $100,000 will not be counted in the PPP program, both on the front end for qualifying for your loan and also on the back end during the forgiveness process. So you have to essentially reduce compensation in excess of $100,000 down to $100,000. So basically, the calculation, as is shown on the slide, is $1,923.08 per week is allowed.
So a lot of confusion has been around how sole proprietors or particular individuals who maybe are self-employed and what their eligibility is with this. And so first I'm going to talk about what that is and then also how it can interface with another program called the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. And while this doesn't apply to you, the nonprofits, we know a lot of the folks you work with within your communities, with your clients and who you work with probably fit within there, and they're having some questions and confusion. Of course, you would send them to us, the SBDC, to be able to assist with that. And we've helped literally hundreds and hundreds of self-employed individuals both apply for the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance with the EDD, as well as to be able to apply for the PPP and take advantage of this program as well. So I think the number one thing to understand is as they're applying, and the number one piece of advice, while their federal taxes aren't due yet until July 15th, have a draft 2019 tax return available. That's going to get them to organize their finances. Because what they're going to find is on their 1040 Schedule C, line 31, and I realize that's very specific, but that is exactly what their net profit is. Because an eligible business for the PPP is someone who was in business prior to February 15th, 2020 and had profit. And so if you can demonstrate that obviously with your 2019, and so this may be someone who is self-employed. Maybe they're a self-employed graphic artist. Maybe they're a self-employed, other type of gig worker. Maybe they drive for Uber or DoorDash or something like that. This is a way in which they're also still able to take advantage of this if they've lost revenue or wages due to the pandemic. And so the PPP and the PUA can interface. But the number one thing to understand for self-employed individuals, and the piece of advice, is you can't double dip. You cannot be paying yourself from PPP and be getting paid from PUA at the same time. That said, with the 24-week extension, that is actually something that's very important to be able to do. So if they have not applied because they have PUA, we recommend applying for PPP, because then you can start when the PUA ends on July 25th, and that extra $600 a week ends on that date. Then they can start paying themselves from the Paycheck Protection Plan. And that's a very important way for them to be able to get some revenue, to be able to pay their expenses and so forth. So again, to circle back, individuals, self-employed individuals, sole proprietors, gig workers, that type of individual is eligible for PPP. They may have been reluctant to take advantage of it due to a lot of the restrictions, but with the PPP Flexibility Act, it makes more sense for them now to be able to take advantage of it and actually have it work together with the PUA and use those funds to pay themselves when the PUA runs out on July 25th. And they can still use that now, as we'll talk about momentarily, to also be able to use those expenses on some of their overhead, like rent or utility types of payments. And so we can go ahead, move on to the next slide, and Marquise will be able to talk about some of that.
Absolutely. So looking at the PPP program, as far as the records you have to keep and some of the timing of it all. So if your organization, or maybe one of your constituents or clients that come to your organization are either is still seeking out the PPP or has some questions, I want to kind of frame this in a way. So I was saying earlier, and Danny also said, this goes through the banks. So you put in your application to a bank or another type of alternative lender. Is one important thing to note, that after they've approved their PPP loan, by law, the banks have 10 days to disperse the loan. So if you or someone that you serve has been approved by a lending institution and 10 days has went by and they have not received a loan, something is wrong. So we've seen cases where the bank had an incorrect account number, or there was some glitch in the system somewhere that was delaying the bank from making the deposit. So please understand that I would check back with the bank and try to take care of any issues hanging out there so that you can get the money as quickly as possible. And so one of the other important things to note is, as soon as you get access to the funds, the 24-week period begins. You can't take the funds and say, well, I'm going to wait until 23 weeks from the loan dispersal date to start activity. That won't work. So the moment you receive the funds, the clock starts ticking, and you have up to 24 weeks. So you can still choose to spend it over an 8-week period. But what I would stress is planning. So as you're going in and you're starting to apply, you have applied or you're waiting on a dispersal, go ahead and start planning what this looks like in either your nonprofit or one of the constituents you serve, so that once you get the funds, you have it laid out and you know exactly what you need to do, right? And so because of the rule change, we have a little bit more of a benefit on the split of how the PPP funds could be used. So before the Flexibility Act, you would have to use 70% of the PPP funds on payroll, right? So that has been reduced to at least 60% in order to be forgiven, right? So I want to make sure I get that point in there. So you must use 60%, of the PPP funds for payroll expenses. And what you can do is, like I was saying before, having that plan. As soon as you get approval, you want to go ahead and reach out to people and start to let them know that, hey, I have some funding. I could bring you back to work. So that gives the question of, what if my institutional organization isn't quite open yet due to the local, health ordinances? Then, I would encourage you, because you've applied for this this forgivable loan, to think about other and creative ways to have your employees contribute to your organization by maybe doing some work in a remote manner. Like I was saying before, the purpose of this funding is to keep people off of unemployment. So our legislators really want us to really be creative and making sure we do that. So you could have people do remote projects, or you could literally have them be on leave. Now, once you get reopened, you just want to give them advance notice that you have funds and they can come back to work. So the second part of the the use in order to be forgivable is no more than 40% of the funds can be used on rent, mortgage interest, and utilities. And so I would, our advice is to use as much of it on payroll as you can, understanding that there needs to be flexibility. So, but only use it on expenses that are in line with the regulations. So rent, mortgage interest, and utilities. And please keep documentation, right? Payroll records are going to be there, but keep documentation. So rent statements, canceled checks that you've, to show that you've paid the rent, any proof that you've, paid the interest on your mortgage, utility bills and invoices. You definitely want to keep those records so that when you submit for the forgiveness process, it becomes easy as possible. Like we were saying earlier, that process is long, is arduous, and it's even complicated for us, and we do this work on a daily basis. So having those records right up front allows you to quickly fill out the application to provide backup. So when it gets in front of the lender, they don't have to ask a lot of questions. They're able to process it, get you forgiven, so you can go on and continue to grow your nonprofit organization, or for the constituents that you serve, they can continue to grow your business. So I think we can move forward to the next slide.
So again, along these lines, so Marquise just talked about the types of expenses and we're focused on that. Of course, at least 60% has to be on payroll and no more than 40% on rent, mortgage interest, utilities, and so forth. And all of that has to be during that 24-week time period. The other factor that's very important within the forgiveness component is maintaining your full-time equivalent staff. In other words, your total FTE count. It does not necessarily mean you have to have the exact same employees. And so it doesn't mean you have to still have, the same person, but you have to have the same total number of full-time equivalent employees. And so what that is before it was very difficult, and there were a lot of businesses very concerned about this, a lot of nonprofit organizations, because like we said, maybe their operations are very limited, maybe folks didn't want to come back to work and so forth. But now with the new Flexibility Act that was just enacted, instead of having to have your FTE count up by June 30th, now it's not until the end of the calendar year. And so as you're rehiring or as you're staffing up, you do not have to have your FTE count back up until December 31st, 2020. And so that's what's important. We're going to talk a little bit more about what that particularly means, but also how that's going to particularly work. So you're going to want to have a plan for that as you start rehiring. The other component is the level of payroll. So pretty much what it is you can't reduce what you're paying an existing employee. Doesn't mean you can't increase their employees, but certainly you can't increase them greater than over 100,000. But you also cannot reduce their total salaries and wages for what they were receiving prior, in other words, in 2019, by more than 25%. Yes, you can increase. So if you had a staff person that was able to come back and work part-time or things like this, and you increase their hours, say from 10 to 30, that's allowed. So that's what you're able to do. But it's important to also recognize, though, that again, to reiterate, the rehiring, you have now until December 31st, 2020. As of last week, that was until the end of this month. So that is a huge flexibility, especially since operations are not opening up as quickly. So the key to kind of understand, going back in time, is PPP was created in March and was enacted into law on March 27th. And so the 8-week time, even in talking to a couple members of Congress and their staff, they said the 8 weeks and all of that was a guess, literally was a guess. Obviously now, over the months that the pandemic has been in place, we've had the different public health orders, and you've seen different levels of activity throughout the country. That's why they enacted the Flexibility Act, and to allow now until December 31st, as well as allowing until the 24-week time period. And so these are important components. So I think we're ready to move on to the next slide. So we'll kind of fly through these next ones here. These are just some examples of the detailed records. We can actually go, these are samples of payroll reports. Next slide, again, next slide. And utility bills. Again, reiterating, you want to keep these types of detailed records and going forward, and even canceled checks. One piece of advice we're even giving for self-employed individuals is as you pay yourself, just write yourself a check from your business payroll, your business checking account, and deposit that into your personal account to really have a clear record. So we can go on to the next slide. Marquise.
Yeah. So looking at calculating FTE, so one of the things we talked about earlier was making sure you maintain those FTE levels as required by the PPP program in order to be forgiven. So we've gotten a lot of questions from businesses, nonprofits, all of the above on calculating the full-time equivalent count. So some of the steps we're asking people to take in order to make that calculation. So one of the first things you want to do is take a look at your January 2020 payroll, right? This was kind of pre-pandemic or pre-COVID, at least here in the U.S. And so that should be an accurate depiction of what your FTE counts were at that time. So you want to take a look at the total number of employees that you had working full-time. And by full-time, we mean at least 35 hours, but 35 to 40 hours per week, right? So after you got that, you want to add the total number of hours worked by part-time employees for each week. So in example, you have 5 part-time employees, work 140 hours in the month. So after you have all of that data, you want to go ahead and divide each week by 40. But if your full-time week is 35 hours a week, you'll go ahead and divide that by 35. So using the example we gave above, at 5 part-time employees working 140 hours, you would look at that and say 140 hours divided by a 40-hour work week would equal 3.5 FTEs. So that's how you make that calculation. It isn't it's pretty straightforward, but it can seem kind of daunting. And so one of the things that we're also recommending is using the time frame, like I was saying before, prior to February 15th to determine an average. So you want to look back at least 4 weeks prior to February 15th to get your average. And if you're looking for more content on calculating FTEs and how to do that math, here's a resource we have for you on our presentation, a link that you'll be able to go to. But you could also take advantage of the Nonprofit Institute services, or for your constituents who may have businesses, recommending them over to the Small Business Development Center. And someone like myself or Daniel, we have a team of such awesome people. They'll pick up the phone, sit down with that person virtually, and coach them through, calculating their FTE and ensuring that either you all going to the Nonprofit Institute or the businesses you serve are able to adequately have the information needed to be forgiven. Next slide.
So a couple of key tips, and as you're looking at this, that we just kind of want to be able to focus on, and we've hit on some of these. And so this is for you, the nonprofit that have your PPP, or certainly this is for your constituents, is to really, number one is, of course, rehire your furloughed staff when the loan approval occurs. But it's important also to be able to at least offer that, and we're going to talk about a little bit here some of the safe harbors related to that. But also beyond that is to make sure you have a plan to have your FTE levels return to pre-disaster numbers by December 31st. Now again, that makes it a lot easier because there was a lot of stress about having that by the end of this month as opposed to by the end of the year. That 6 months of flexibility really, really assists folks. The other one is, and you all as nonprofits certainly can help to understand this even better than businesses, is you actually have a separate accounting system, or really a separate code in your QuickBooks, in your accounting software, a separate Excel file for it as a budget, or even some are having separate bank accounts. And basically you're treating this, so from the nonprofit speak, like a separate grant from a different funder, and the different types of accounting you're having to provide for them. Explaining that to a business owner is a lot trickier than it is to a nonprofit that's used to fund accounting as opposed to for-profit or cash level accounting that businesses are doing. But certainly you're going to want to have that very clear so you have clearly identified records. Like we said, also clearly identify with your checks as well as within your accounting software what the PPP eligible expenses. That's everything from putting a little memo on the check to flagging it with your particular expenses. So when you're making that rent payment or you're making that SDG&E power utility payment, you're actually clearly identifying that as PPP eligible. And of course, all your payroll. And so again, even for folks that are paying themselves, the self-employed, the gig worker, write yourself a check from your business account and be able to have that then to be able to pay yourself and clearly have that identified, so that's separate. Also, your lender is the one who's going to be providing this type of guidance. So we're going to talk a little bit, and Marquise flagged it earlier, about this lengthy application. When talking to lenders is they're going to have their own portal. They're the ones responsible for providing the final forgiveness, and they're going to provide guidance. And so one thing that's important, and we're going to talk about this, is also another critical tip is wait. Don't rush to apply. You do not need to apply. Remember, you're not going to have a loan payment due until towards the end of this year. So make sure you're clearly going over this, you clearly understand the forgiveness, that your lender has put out their guidance, has put out whatever portal they're doing. They're going to be indicating whatever records. Work with your SBDC advisor for businesses, for also the nonprofit advisor that's also SBDC now as well, to be able to kind of review that before you submit to your lender to make sure you have 100% in order, because that's going to be massive for you to be able to turn the PPP loan into a forgivable loan, which works like a grant, and really be able to have those expenses and not have those on your books and going forward as a loan. So those are some of our number one and primary tips as you're starting to look at forgiveness as you go forward. But really, wait, make sure your ducks are in a row, keep clear, detailed records, work with one of our advisors that's at no cost to you. So we move on to the next slide.
And so just to reiterate a little bit before I jump into this information on scams, to talk about the timeline that Danny was just given. So some of the first possible dates that folks will be on the hook to make payments for their PPP loan, if not forgiven, is going to be in October, right? So there's a 6-month automatic deferral on payment. So I just want to really stress what Danny was saying, and that there's no rush, right? You definitely have time, at least until the fourth quarter of this year, to go ahead and submit that. So don't get all stressed out. Calm down, breathe through this. We know it's a lot of information and a lot of just a horrible situation, but you want to do things right and not rush, and you have plenty of time to get it done. So one of the things that we're seeing, since we've moved into this virtual world, is the crooks come out, and what we mean by that is criminals, scammers, people doing fraudulent activity. They always take advantage of these situations like that. So SBA has been giving us some guidance and some information on some of the scams and things that are going on. So please, please, please be on the lookout. If someone is offering you, saying, hey, you can pay me and I'll help you get a PPP, don't do it. If a lending institution is saying that they charge you for PPP loans, please don't believe them. It's not true. This funding is 100% at no cost to you as far as fees to get a loan submitted. So be on the lookout for that. One of the things we also are recommending is, as you're getting emails maybe that appear to be from your lending institution, please triple check and make sure that it's coming from a trusted source and not a fraudulent source that that ask you to submit information. So our antennas are way up, and we're really on the lookout and being diligent about educating people about some of the schemes that are happening out there, and we want to help people understand how not to be taken advantage of. So if you receive an email asking you to take an action that is from your bank, check with your banker or your lending institution, and to ensure, if you're just not sure about it, to make sure that it is coming from them and that there is a request from your bank. And I can tell you right now, the SBA, if you're ever interacting with them, will not reach out to you via email that's not from an SBA.gov email and ask you to submit documentation outside of what you've already submitted for these programs. So I'm spending a lot of time on this because I want everybody to beware of the scams, and there's unfortunately been situations where people have already been scammed, and we just don't want you guys to go through that. So just a couple of resources for you here in the form of links. So the Office of Inspector General does have a hotline, and the number is listed there that you could report any suspected fraud. Locally here, our district attorney's office is definitely taking a hard look at fraud. So there's a link to some information about what they're doing, and you can definitely reach out to the DA's office if you've been a victim of a fraud or you're suspecting that someone is targeting you for a fraudulent scheme. Next slide.
So the other loan that we didn't talk about, and I know a number of nonprofits took advantage of this, and certainly literally thousands, well, millions of businesses took advantage of applying for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Right when the disaster occurred, this was the loan that the SBA was talking about because it's in statute already. So, for example, historically, this was the loan that when there were wildfires or earthquakes, this has been a loan that's been utilized and been promoted by the SBA. And so what happened is after the CARES Act came about, they actually did a simplified application. And with that simplified application, there were over 6 million applicants. And so due to funding levels and so forth, they turned that application off on April 15th. But certainly with the millions of nonprofits as well as small businesses that have applied, there's a lot of questions about that. And so those applications are being processed. Right now, they've processed probably about 1.5 million of those applications. Folks are getting different types of levels of approval for those. So there's 2 tiers. Number 1 was the advance. So that was the up to $10,000 advance that you would have received just automatically in your bank account. And that was based on the number of employees you had. So if you're an organization that you're self-employed and you had 1 employee, you got $1,000. 5 employees, $5,000. 50 employees, you got $10,000 because it was up to $10,000. That is a grant. That does not need to be repaid. There is no loan for that. And so it does factor into your PPP forgiveness. Your PPP forgiveness will be reduced by that idle advance amount. The other is, of course, the actual loan, the idle loan. And so the SBA, how they're handling that is that they'll email you a login for a particular portal upon your approval, whether or not you want to accept the loan or not, and also understanding the terms. Any loan over $25,000 will require collateral, and they will request collateral. Under $25,000, they will not. And these are loans at 3.75% for businesses, 2.75% for nonprofits. And so those are a couple of things to think about. When you get that approval, or if you have confusions or questions about that, reach out to us. Reach out to the folks at the Nonprofit Institute. Reach out to us at the SBDC. We'll help you understand kind of some of the impacts with that and everything. If you have questions about the loan itself, this is the number, 800-659-2955. That's their customer service number with the SBA. They have a heavy call volume. We've seen wait times be very long, other times not so long. Remember that we're on Pacific time, so my recommendation is perhaps later in the day to be able to take advantage of that and kind of understand that that's the nature of that particular call. So we wanted to give you a little update on economic injury disaster loan. You can no longer apply for this, but again, there were over 6 million applicants, and we know that there were hundreds of thousands of businesses and nonprofits that applied here in San Diego, and we're still assisting folks as they get those approvals to understand what that means and really how that's going to impact your organization. So our next slide.
So, like we started in the beginning, we've reiterated throughout the process, or throughout this presentation. Please utilize the resources that are out there meant to help you. So the Small Business Development Center, right, which also includes the Nonprofit Institute over at a University of San Diego, we receive funding from the CARES Act to support businesses during this time, right? So Congress understands that businesses are dealing with a lot, and so so they put up money in order for us to be able to serve you. So these are taxpayer dollars, right? So I just highly encourage you, because we all pay taxes, to take advantage of some of this prepaid service by you, although at no cost to you now, so that you can move your organization or your business forward. So if you're out there and you're lost and you have questions, whether they're big or small, no matter what, look, we have people at every stage who can help you walk through. Please go request an advisor. So you can visit the Small Business Development Center at www.sdivsbdc.org. That's our website. Once you get to our website, on our homepage, we have 2 boxes that I really want to point out to you. One box is a request for counseling. No matter if you're a nonprofit or business, doesn't matter. Click that box and spend the 5 minutes that it'll take you to submit a request for counseling. I want to say a little bit more about the request for counseling as well. It's a government form that we're required to use by our funders, but one important thing about the request for counseling that I want to point out, our engagement will be confidential. So whatever issues that you're dealing with will stay between you and the person that you are assisting, and roughly will be captured in our customer relationship management system so that we're able to kind of manage your engagement with us and provide you with the best help. So whatever you tell them, confidential, and we will, because it's free, doesn't mean that we're going to be salesmen and sell you stuff. You can access this all without us trying to upsell you or get you into our private business that we may own or refer you to an attorney or a CPA or any other entity that we have some type of relationship with. It is truly free, no strings attached. But, we pay the people that are delivering this assistance to you. So I don't want you to associate, because it's no cost, with low value. These are expert level people, like Danny said in the beginning, that have been business owners, executives, managers at institutions. They really know what they're talking about and can bring a lot of value to you. So click on that button. You can get some help. If you're a nonprofit, you'll be we'll route you through our system, and you'll be contacted by the folks over at the Nonprofit Institute. The second button that I want to call out is the workshops and training button. Because we're in this whole virtual environment, all of these locations that Danny talked about earlier are all pumping out content via webinar. So there's a lot of good information that you can go on and register for. Some of it is on demand, some of it is live. So for the live information, you'll be able to, sign in and register for a particular workshop on a certain date. For the on-demand content, you can go in and be able to take advantage of that content at your own pace and in your own time. Whether you like to be up at 3 a.m. Watching information on how to build a website or how to do marketing, or 6 p.m. It's definitely there for you. So we just want to encourage you so much to take advantage of the resources that are out there so that your nonprofit stays afloat in this time, or that your business or the businesses that you serve are able to kind of weather the storm and get through this interesting COVID 2020 year.
So kind of to wrap things up before we go into Q&A, a couple extra things that we want to be able to touch on. As Marquise was talking about the different types of trainings, one partnership that we have is with the County of San Diego. And again, it's an informal because we're paid for by the federal government through the CARES Act to provide assistance to businesses and organizations as they're adapting to the COVID-19 public health orders. As we know, there's a whole bunch of new restrictions, everything from social distancing and PPE to installing plexiglass, sanitation, etc. And so we have a series of webinars that we're calling our Adapt series on helping businesses to be able to, as they're reopening, to be able to go through that. Included in that is childcare businesses, restaurants, retail, hair salons, and we'll be coming out with additional industries such as gyms, office spaces, and so forth, as well as some general types of things on human resources and what you need to be able to do as you reopen and the impacts that those have, as well as cybersecurity in particular in the telework environment and how you protect those as well. The other thing I wanted to talk about is just because, again, these are kind of brand new, is of course we're here to be able to assist nonprofits and businesses with local programs as well. The County of San Diego, through Mission Driven Finance and the San Diego Foundation, has the Nonprofit Loan Fund. We at the SBDC, we're the technical assistance provider. And of course, our nonprofit technical assistance provider is the Nonprofit Institute at the University of San Diego. So that application is now coming out and being available. So you go ahead and work with us. We know the types of information you're going to need to have and compile to be able to have an effective application. We can help you review it and package it before you submit that, as well as helping the businesses as they're applying now also for both the county fund that is through Accion, as well as through the City of San Diego's Small Business Relief Fund. And so those are the funds that we're also the technical assistance provider for. So really that's what it is before COVID, we're the Small Business Development Center helping businesses from ideation to exit, to be able to help them from the smallest business, the basic hobby business, to technology businesses that grow and achieve venture capital. But we're also here for the nonprofits to be able to support you as you expand your operations and your capital needs, to be able to learn about marketing, to better plan as well, using the business planning types of classes. And so that's really what we're here for, to be able to assist the folks in your community use us as the resource, so when people have business questions, you know we're here, we're a trusted partner, we're part of the community, we want to help your businesses, we want your community to have thriving businesses and to be able to succeed, and so that's really what we're here for. So we're happy to be able to answer some questions. We got about no questions, all right? So we'll go within a couple of different types of things. So Marquise, can you tell us a little bit more about some of the centers that we have and what communities they are in San Diego?
And that's a very important question that Danny asked. Before I launch into that, I'll give you this overall viewpoint of the reason why we're structured the way that we're structured. So being that we're partially funded by the federal government, one of the requirements we have is to make sure that we provide blanket coverage to all communities in San Diego, regardless of where they're located or what access problems they may have. So we strategically partner with different institutions and organizations in order to provide that blanket coverage. So like Danny was saying, 10 locations throughout San Diego and Imperial County, and some of those, some of our organizations have more than one office space. And so, if your nonprofit or your business is, in North San Diego County, we have an office in Carlsbad. Some of the things that they do is really help with specializing, should I say, is a lot in helping businesses get started, a lot of access to capital, and then for those for-profit businesses that are seeking government contracts, they definitely can help with that. So we see a question coming through: what are some of the things people are learning during the physical reopening that maybe you have not yet mentioned? And that's that's a really good question. And so I can answer that both as from the SBDC side, and I'm sure Danny has some stuff to say, and then from a patron. So I'll go patron first. So I've been a customer. I've went out to eat twice. One time last night, and then one time I think last Friday or before that. And one of the things I'm seeing as a patron and as a customer of businesses is just I'm blown away by the reduction in capacity that like restaurants are experiencing. And so I think that's something that businesses have to consider as they're setting up these social distancing queues and figuring out how to maximize their profit while operating in a reduced space. And so one of the thing that's striking me the most is, are businesses prepared for the reduction in their physical space to be able to, properly serve customers and maximize the profit coming in? Now, luckily, us at the SBDC, because our partnership with the county, like Danny has mentioned, and because some of the expertise that we have, we're able to assist people with thinking through their physical reopening, whether it be a restaurant or another facility. We have experts who will work with you as a thought partner to help you think through how to set up queues, how to do sanitation practices, how to ensure that your customers and employees are safe. And we also have HR experts who can tell you how to shift your policies to be in alignment with the new reality of COVID. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. I don't know if you have something different on that.
No, so I think there's two things I want to talk about. One is certainly, like Marquise and I have said, is use our services that's why we have the series of webinars, and we developed a partnership with the County of San Diego and Supervisor Fletcher's office, is because what happens is of course the state government and the county public health department, they issue the new guidelines. Well, they're written by regulators, and they're long, they're complicated, and of course, they're trying to do a one-size-fits-all, but we all know each of your spaces are different and unique. And so utilize our services to kind of be able to dialogue what that looks like. We have the webinars on purpose to be able to have those conversations, access to that, and begin to start showing some of the best practices. But that's complementary to also still having the free access to the business advisors to be able to walk you through how that may or may not work for your particular space. So I think those are some of the things that are very, very important, is to not be afraid of some of those the long forms, things like this. We're trying to simplify that and help you explain that. All the way from a simple 20-minute on-demand webinar on how to create your safe reopen plan, the general document that the county wants, to some of the specifics and the details about restaurants, retail, hair salons, and the like, and navigating what the information is that's being put out. The other one that I think that we haven't mentioned, and I think that's very important, is the implementation of technology and utilization of technology. Is a lot of businesses were probably set in their ways. They didn't utilize a lot of technology, and now they're having to. Everything from as simple as, okay, you have a barber shop or a hair salon, to be able to utilize texting technology, just say, okay, this is scheduling your appointment, this is when you're able to come, to then being able to then text when you're there, to be able to come in and not wait in the physical space, but rather wait in your car, wait outside, so that way you're able to maintain social distancing. To larger levels of technology implementation, be it e-commerce, being, in other words, taking a look at ways in which then you're able to present your services or your products online in different ways and be able to manage those. And so we have a lot of different things about that. So I think those are some of the things. Don't be too afraid, but use us, because we recognize that as these guidelines come out, they're anywhere from 5 to 15 pages long. They seem complicated, they're difficult, there's a lot of checklists, they're overwhelming, but that's why we have the webinars, that's why we have the business advisors, really to be able to help folks be able to kind of get through those types of things.
Yeah, and I'll add to that a little bit something kind of differently, but it's on the technology theme. So I think COVID has shoved us into a situation where, the interaction with technology, sorry, got a little cough, is going to be more and more prevalent, right? So, like Danny was so eloquently saying about the effective use of technology in your business or your nonprofit, I would also think about ways from your customer, your supporters, your contributors, your sponsors. How do you think about different ways to engage them as well through the effective use of technology? So not only in your operations, but engagement will likely never be the same as it was. Not saying we won't go back to in-person stuff. I think we will, but I think we're all also used to. We've had many months of it. Doing this virtual kind of interaction. So think about creative ways to virtually interact with your stakeholders, your customers, people that are sponsoring your nonprofit, so that you can continue to build your brand and continue to have that engagement where we have physical limitations. And we also should think about preparing for next year. We don't know what's going to happen, but if we fail to plan, then we're truly planning to fail. So think about your technology plans for the future and how you can integrate those into your operations, so that just in case we have to hunker down in 2021, again, that you're ready to do so.
Do you have any other questions? Okay, so another one I want to do is I have a request to you, the nonprofits. And both Marquise and I have this request, is we know that there's been some frustration with some of the disaster capital in communities, in particularly communities of color and our underserved communities. And we're here to assist. Like we said at the beginning, we have a team of over 100 advisors. They're doing advising, yes, remotely, but that means they can do advising all the way using old school technology of just as simple as a phone call and helping people walk through. Previously, we would be able to assist people more hands-on that did have technology challenges, obviously in our offices. But now we can't do that anymore. But we're trying to reach folks that have not been able to take advantage or have been fearful or misunderstood what the PPP program is, what the Small Business Relief Fund is, what the County of San Diego's fund is, and how to access those particular programs. Perhaps they've had trouble because their finances aren't in order. Perhaps they've had trouble because they have technology issues or are concerned about technology questions or things like that. We need your help being able to reach to as many of folks that have not taken advantage of these relief programs that are business owners. That could be the self-employed person who works out of their home. This could be a landscaper, a gardener, a plumber, an Uber driver, a DoorDash driver, a barber, etc. All the way up to someone who's maybe developing technology in their home, doing accounting in their home, or working in different ways. We need your help reaching that community because we're here really to be able to assist them. And I know, Marquise, you got something to say on that too.
Absolutely, a ton to say. Like Danny said, sometimes some of the things that we take for granted in our everyday life that we have access to, others don't, right? And so when we're looking at, underserved communities of color, access to information is so key. So we definitely need your help in letting people know that we're here, right? There are resources for you, and that those resources not only are here, but they understand the plight that you deal with. The SBDC is a very diverse organization, not only from if you're looking on the surface level of race and ethnicity, but experience, background, thought, upbringing, it's all over the board. So we're a culturally competent organization that could truly go into any community and meet with them at the level that they want to be met and coached with, and help them get through kind of some of these challenges. We've all been following the news. We all know kind of what's going on, especially around the Black Lives Matter and some of the protests that are out there. I would say we're doing our part to help businesses move forward, and I think we need a collective us to reach down into some of these communities and help them move forward by getting them access to information and resources like the SBDC. Or you're a nonprofit. Your nonprofit may offer some really, really great service that could mean the difference for a community. So, the least you could do is reach out. And so Danny and I are all but begging, I think, for everybody to have a little empathy, sympathy, and humility, and try to do our part to make sure we move everybody forward as a country, so that we don't create a divide, equity divide, and making sure people have access to resources. So I'm glad we're able to bring that message to you. And if you need our help, me and Danny are willing, able, and the rest of our SBDC team will mobilize to provide assistance anywhere that we're needed. And if we're not aware, we don't know. If you make us aware, we'll come in and provide that assistance. So I'm glad Danny took that line.
So along those lines, a couple of the extra pieces of service that we have that we're trying to target. One of the things that we considered might be an issue is technology access. And so we are now doing, in addition to our webinars, we're even doing conference calls. We have one on Tuesday at 9 a.m. that's going to be in Spanish. And then, of course, some of our webinars you can actually call into. And we're going to be doing another one of those probably next week at Thursday at 4:30. And so we're having this type of access for that. But also, if you know or you have that trust already built in your community and you want to invite Marquise or myself or any of our other advisors can come in, even if you're having different languages, of course, if you need someone that's able to speak Spanish, Vietnamese, Swahili, etc., we're able to do those. We've provided already webinars in many different languages and provide that types of access. Because us at the SBDC, we're committed to having really an inclusive economic growth here in San Diego. It has been something that's been conscious for myself and Marquise as we've been able to expand and grow our network and bring on partners such as the International Rescue Committee and the Asian Business Association, and expand geographically as well to be able to work in communities and work with different organizations. But during these times, we have Marquise and I to the point of we've done so many webinars we lost count for partner organizations. Right off the bat, we made sure we had a briefing for, in particular, business-facing nonprofits like business improvement districts, chambers of commerce, and so forth. But we know you and the communities are working with them. You're going to interface, even if you're not a business-facing organization. You probably will have folks that maybe now that they're seeking employment, maybe they're looking at self-employment as an option. We're going to continue to be there to serve. We know that this is going to have a long tail in the economy. We know that our underserved communities are and will continue to be the hardest hit. And we're here to continue to help them if they're looking to be entrepreneurs, to be able to start their businesses. We already have rolling right now where you can have concentrated, longer facing, or as simple as an hour-long programs on how to start a business. We have those in English, we have those in Spanish, and we're going to continue to be there. We're already starting up our traditional capital, Connecting with Capital. That's starting up again this Friday, where people maybe now they're needing to look at not just disaster capital, but be able to get that types of assistance and really be conscious and be able to do that. So those are some of the things that we're really looking to be able to do. And so I guess also, Marquise, could you talk a little bit about the County of San Diego's loan fund for Acción as well as the nonprofit loan?
Yeah, good point. Before I launch into that, I want to say just one last point on the underserved community and stuff we could do. And this is applicable to all businesses, by the way. So for those businesses that you frequent or for your own nonprofits, I think one of the best things that we can do is help to promote them, as customers or supporters. So as a nonprofit, one of the things I encourage you to do is ask people who you support and that you serve to go ahead and weigh in on your social media. Please encourage them to like your pages, to post up on your pages about their experiences so that others could understand the experiences they have had. And for you, as a customer and supporter of your community, one of the things we encourage you to do is for businesses that you frequent, whether they be people of color or not, that's irrelevant to my point, is that please give them reviews so that as we're trying to decide where we want to go, spend our dollars at, we have reviews that are from the community that could help influence us and make a decision. So just take a little bit of time if you have it, and make sure you weigh in and promote those organizations inside of your community. So on to the Acción County of San Diego. I think it's mission-driven finance. There's a lot of organizations inside of this as well as us. So the County of San Diego has been working diligently to create some funding for businesses that have, for some reason or another, haven't taken advantage of the government programs like the PPP or the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. We always use a lot of acronyms. So right now, there's kind of a funding available for businesses all throughout the county, and there's like 2 separate buckets. I'm not sure how much money is left in the smaller bucket, but the county created a loan fund in partnership with Acción for-profit businesses. We'll touch on the nonprofit businesses here in a second. So if you're located in the county in an unincorporated area, Axion has a loan fund. They also have funding for businesses located in cities as well. But you can get $5,500 to $50,000. I think the rates are 1 or 3.99%, and if I'm correct, the term is a 5-year term. So very low interest loan. The good thing about this funding is there's no fees up front. The only fee that you'll be paying for this loan is the state loan guarantee fee, which will be rolled into your principal. So there's not going to be any out-of-pocket costs. So, for businesses on the line who have not yet taken advantage of the EIDL, not the advanced portion, because if you have the advanced portion, you're still okay to take this. But if you have received the EIDL or PPP, unfortunately, you're not eligible for this. But if you have not taken advantage, there's a very low interest loan from a local mission-driven institution that could really help you bridge the gap. One of the things that stands out about this loan is that they're requesting an overview from you, or a plan, I should say more of a plan, of how your business intends to survive COVID. So they want a resiliency plan. And the reason I'm smiling about this plan is you have an organization of very smart and dedicated people who can help you think through, walk through this plan. So if you don't yet have a plan for how your business is going to stay resilient and kind of weather the storm of COVID, the folks at the Small Business Development Center, or through our partnership with the Nonprofit Institute, could help you build that resiliency plan, monitor it, and update it if needed. So as your business kind of goes through this process, not only will you be able to use that plan to access funding, but you'll be able to use it to to make sure your business stays afloat. And so I don't have the website in front of me, but if you're interested in the Axion loan fund, you could go. It's probably posted on the Axion page. Definitely to Axion, and they're a local nonprofit institute. If you don't know Axion, go to their page. Look at their COVID-19 relief fund, click the link and just follow through that process. And if they feel like you need a little bit of technical assistance, no worries. You'll be automatically funneled over to us at the SBDC, and we'll be there to make sure your application has all the information that you need to get it submitted. In addition to the fund for profit businesses, they've created, in partnership with Mission Driven Finance, the San Diego Foundation, us at the SBDC, and the County of San Diego, a loan fund for nonprofits. I believe that fund is going live on the 12th, Friday, so it's still not yet live. And so we're trying to receive some additional information about the application, and trust us, once it's live, before it's live, we're going to meet with the folks over at Mission Driven Finance, and we'll work with the Nonprofit Institute to understand everything that they're looking for. I'm imagining it's pretty straightforward, just like any other existing loan. And then we'll be giving information to you, the nonprofit, about the funding, and we'll be helping you step through and apply for that funding if you need it. And again, I encourage you to take advantage of it if your organization needs it, as it can be a bridge to keep you open so that you're able to keep having an impact and doing the work, the magnificent work that you're already doing.
So just kind of to start to wrap up again, I'm Danny Fitzgerald, Marquise Jackson, San Diego Imperial Small Business Development Center. We both work for Southwestern Community College, but we support a large network of our SBDCs. We are a one big network here in San Diego to assist small businesses, and included in that network is the Nonprofit Institute at the University of San Diego. Because we recognize nonprofits are also businesses and are needing that type of assistance, and so we support them as well, and we're partnered with them to continue to help the nonprofits be able to succeed and grow, and especially during these challenging times with COVID-19. And so we highly recommend you work with the SBDC through our nonprofit partners. You also, again, our ask to you is to be able to reach out to your community, remind them that there is assistance, for them to be able to access the capital programs that are from the City of San Diego, the County of San Diego, and the federal government. We're here to help them understand what those are. We're here to be able to help them. We're not doing the we're from the government and here to help you. Rather, we are part of the community. Like I said, we work for a community college. Our partners are nonprofit organizations or institutions of higher learning. We're part of the community. We're committed to the community to help folks be able to grow. I would want to thank the Nonprofit Institute for the invitation to be able to be here and to be able to talk to you and really to be able to assist nonprofits. Marquise, bring us home.
It was beautiful. What Danny said. I just want to reiterate, we built our entire organization on advocacy and community support. Again, like Danny was saying, we thank all the partners. I know the City of San Diego has a huge part in making this academy available for you all. So shouts out to the City of San Diego. I think they're also listening to some of the people out there and making some decisions about how best to support San Diego. So, just one more word of encouragement. Please, please, please use us. I look forward to hearing from you. If you ever, have a challenge or a needed issue, both Danny and I are there, open, willing, and available to help you in your organization. And again, we thank you for spending this time with us, and we look forward to you coming in to see our partners at the Nonprofit Institute, or if you're a for-profit business, to you taking advantage of some of the no-cost services, again, that you've prepaid for so you can move your business forward. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.